Does Matthew Stafford have arm fatigue? And will the Super Bowl champions repeat? Find out next on Niner Nate's Nonsense. Hello and welcome to Niner Nate's Nonsense. And let me just say before we begin, I'm so glad that I don't have to make a new intro because Deebo Samuel is no longer a Niner. He is signed on for 3 more years, and that feels so good. Welcome to the final episode of our NFC West Preview. The Niners, they step on a football field next week. So do the Rams, of course. So we thought, why not give Ramsbeat and the LA Rams, the Super Bowl champions, a chance to talk about their team and why they're not going to lose 6 straight again. Welcome, Ramsbeat. How are you doing, man?
Hey, man. Great to be here, Niner Nate. Always good to join the Niners nation and talk football with y'all.
Absolutely. Pleasure. You've been on all of our spaces. You've interacted with all of us, and you've always been super nice and fun to hang out with. So I thought, why not bring you on the show? And we could talk about the Rams before the season gets started during our NFC West preview. Let's start with the Rams. You know, you guys won the Super Bowl. Huge deal. Brought in Stafford, and that was the missing piece. You know, it was the Jared Goof, as we like to call him here, was the reason that you guys weren't winning the Super Bowl. Obviously, there was other pieces. Von Miller coming in, signing midway through the season. But, you know, Stafford was a huge piece of the fact that you won. Let's talk a little bit about that team last year. You know, what was your perspective on that team as the year went on?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just going into the year, it was a huge relief because we were, I think, in a very similar situation to the Niners, right? You know, great roster, couldn't get over the hump. Both had been to a Super Bowl, and just feeling like, you know, with an enormous, you know, just crazy talented play callers in Shanahan and McVay. Just these guys had to close half their playbooks, you know, for these quarterbacks, you know, and Goff, once we lost Gurley, the play action wasn't working anymore. And the too high shell came into play that Belichick borrowed from Fangio and shut us down in the Super Bowl. And so, you know, these things change, and all of a sudden these coaches are just getting frustrated. Like, you can see it on both of their faces. And the Rams, you know, just you know, traded away a first, a third, 2 firsts and a third, I think, and for Stafford, and brought him in, and it worked. You know, he just went all in on him, and as the season progressed, he was a MVP candidate through the first half of the season, and then he started going old Stafford, you know, and bad Stafford, as we said, and he started throwing picks, you know, pick sixes to start games, and he fell completely out of the MVP conversation. And then we reestablished the run game a little bit, and as best we could. It certainly never really came back. And then he stopped throwing the picks and kind of, you know, kept good Stafford, which is those fourth quarter comebacks, which he was so adept at after all that practice in Detroit. And then he started throwing the ball away, taking some sacks, and not throwing the picks, which you know, and then we went on the run to the Super Bowl. So, but you know, it was a touch and go there, obviously, with the game with you guys, and kind of shot ourselves in the foot there a little bit with the Tampa Bay game and pulled that one out. And then the Super Bowl was very close as well. So a little bit of luck, but I think most teams that win the Super Bowl have a little bit of luck.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting because the Rams and the 49ers, I think it's not the exact same thing, but I just want to explain this a little bit to the listeners. I think that it's interesting because both of these teams went to the Super Bowl, you know, before. Both of them had quarterbacks that were good enough to get them there, but not good enough to win. The Rams got one that was good enough to win. They won. And so we're going to find out this season if Trey Lance is good enough to win one. And if he is, then I just think these are 2 teams that are just going to battle it out for years to come at this point because, you know, 2 good quarterbacks. Obviously, Stafford isn't, you know, he's not a young guy, but I think that he's a guy who probably will be around for at least 3-4 more years. I don't think he's like going anywhere unless he does have arm fatigue. So let's start with the arm fatigue thing, because I've been joking around about it because, as a Niner fan, all we've heard is Trey Lance has arm fatigue, which we all know isn't true. But what is the deal in Ramsland with them basically kind of limiting how much Stafford throws? And I get it. Maybe it could be the fact that, they went all the way to the Super Bowl. He played a lot more games than he's ever played. Like, what is the story on that side of the NFC West around him and limiting his throws and such?
No, he was hurt. There's no question. I mean, it's not limiting his throws so he can rest the guy. And he was hurt. And he was hurt in the second half of the season. Nobody knows exactly when. They never put him, they never put his arm or him on the, on the list. But he was clearly didn't have the distance, some of the velocity, kind of became more of that cagey old veteran in a lot of the second half of the season, and did a great job, kind of played through it. But after the season was over, they shut him down. They shut him down completely, and he got an injection. We don't know exactly what was in that cocktail that went into his arm, but it was enough to shut him down for, essentially 3 months. And he didn't throw through OTAs. He didn't do anything. He ghosted back there. He'd go back, and then Wolford would throw the ball, or Perkins, one of these guys, the backups would throw it. And he just started throwing, and they got him on a pitch count, for sure. So we'll see. I think going through the season, they're going to nurse it. Maybe he won't throw on. Obviously, they have Tuesday off. They might start throwing a little lightly on Wednesday, maybe a little more heavy on Thursday, and then shut him down until game time on Sunday. So, a little bit of concern there, but we'll see what happens. But it's not arm fatigue; it's injury. It's not what people were accusing Lance of, which was, I agree, a complete joke, right?
Just ridiculous.
He's a young dude. He notoriously didn't play a lot in college and had a ton of rest. So it's, I just think it's crazy.
I just got to point out Kate Santos here with we know Niner Mike won that shit. And you know what I'm talking about, Ramsbeat. You know what I'm talking about.
Our debate. Yeah. But Niner Mike, man, he didn't have any prep time, but I learned a lot from him in terms of delivery. Like I said on that thing at the postmortem on that, like that dude, he's got the gift of gab.
If he can't swear or he can't call people names, though, that's where.
That was the saving grace, because he started getting dinged for that, and he lost his rhythm.
So you mentioned the fact that it's injury. I think that from a Niner perspective, we've kind of noticed that the Rams, while yes, they just won the Super Bowl, it's a little bit different over there this year. It feels like there's a lot more changes happening throughout the team. So let's talk about the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, Cooper Kupp, one of the best wide receivers in the league, he'll be back. You add Allen Robinson, and then you trade away Robert Woods, and Van Jefferson becomes wide receiver 3. So obviously there's Higbee, which, he's fine. He's nothing that's, super crazy to write about. But let's talk a little bit about this wide receiving core, adding Allen Robinson as wide receiver 2. How is the Rams side of the NFC West feeling about, Allen Robinson going over Robert Woods? Because we all know Robert Woods, before he got hurt, was a really good wide receiver.
Yeah. So, what happened was that we started the season last year with Kupp, Woods, and Jefferson in 1, 2, 3, right? And then they traded for
OBJ.
And remember, Deshaun Jackson was in there as wide receiver 4, and he wasn't happy about it. He would have been a huge, if that guy had kept his head on straight and was willing to play that role, that he had a touchdown in the first play of the second half against Tampa Bay in week 3. Another one he would have had, but Stafford underthrew him and tapped his chest and said, "My bad, I didn't realize you were that fast." So that guy could have stretched the field, but he didn't like his wide receiver 4 role. But it was always Kupp, Woods, and Jefferson, and then traded for OBJ 2 days before Woods got hurt and lost the season. So that was like pure luck that we got OBJ before Woods went down. And then OBJ stepped into 2 for Woods. Jefferson stayed at 3. So that's kind of how it was. Now, obviously, OBJ goes down to the Super Bowl. Allen Robinson takes his spot now at the 2. Van Jefferson stays at 3. So, that's how we're going into the season. Now, Van Jefferson just announced he's having surgery on an injury that he had that he sustained this season. It's the same leg that he had that he played on injured in the last part of last season and in the Super Bowl. But so now that opens up this sort of
For
this
Tutu Atwell, right?
Yeah, Tutu Atwell, Jacob Harris, Ben Skoranek, Brandon Powell, our return guy who played receiver with Stafford in Detroit. Those two love each other. And then, of course, there's always this OBJ, potentially coming back, and that's picking up some steam at this point. So there's a really deep wide receiver room there. And so we'll see what happens. But, really excited about Allen Robinson. He's probably the talk of the camp. There's always that player, but he does have to definitely prove himself after kind of dogging it in Chicago last year.
OBJ wouldn't be back until midway through the season, maybe more, right? Because the injury was suffered in the Super Bowl. It's usually a 7-month recovery, something like that.
People are talking mid-November, November-ish. So it's definitely a second half of the season playoff run kind of a thing. So that's why, they're basically just kind of wait and see how his recovery goes. He's waiting to see. He's had offers, probably nothing significant. We don't know for sure, but he's certainly considered the number one unsigned free agent on the market.
Absolutely. And so we all know that, Cam Akers became, running back one, towards the end of the season. You still have Darrell Henderson, but the offensive line that those guys will be running through is a little different this time. So, I mean, talk a little bit about, Whitworth retiring, who's filling in, where the offensive lines changed. Obviously, we know that this was the best offensive line Stafford had in a long time, and that was part of the reason we saw so much success for him. But, let the Niner fans know a little bit more about this offensive line and what it looks like and who are the guys that are, going to be playing on it.
Yeah, so the three guys returning, Brian Allen, our center, one of the very rare occurrences where the Rams actually sign a guy coming off a rookie deal. So he got $6.5 million to stay at center. David Edwards, our left guard, and Rob Havenstein, our right tackle, are the three guys that are back. Pretty solid bunch. And Havenstein, the best of the bunch, one of probably the more underrated right tackles in football, not really talked about a lot. The other two guys, Edwards and Allen, are great. Good enough, right? So left tackle, obviously Andrew Whitworth retiring. And then, so in steps Joseph Noteboom. He's been with us for 4 years, and he is he got a bag. He got $12.5 million a year, and he's stepping in at left tackle. He's been just a great backup all over the line. Always been rated great, and so excited about him as a young guy, a young left tackle to step in. But he has to prove himself, obviously, at a really important position on the field. And then in terms of right guard, we lost Austin Corbett to Carolina in free agency. And so in steps it's the biggest camp, contest, if you will, for a position is that right guard position. And Logan Bruss was our first draft pick at all of 104th pick overall was our first pick in the draft, third round of the very, very end of the third round on a comp pick. Out of Wisconsin, Edwards and Havenstein, two other guys on our line, are also from Wisconsin, so he would make a third. So he's kind of leader in the clubhouse to get that position. But Coleman Shelton, a couple other guys, AJ Jackson, are putting up a little bit of a fight. So camp battle for the right guard position. So we're confident, but I mean, I feel like a lot like you guys, where there's some change. Those are the two position groups where there's the most question marks. And while we're confident, you're confident in Banks. We're confident in Bruss.
Yeah.
You got your center,
our center,
Brendel, and so forth. And so it's just there's question marks there, whereas most of the other position groups are pretty steady.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about Noteboom. I don't know. Obviously, we watched the Niner games, but how did Noteboom play in the games that he played in last year? Because there was games where Whitworth was hurt.
Yeah, Whitworth, he subbed for Whitworth. Whitworth was hurt a few games, and Noteboom, filled in there just great. Just didn't miss a beat. He was awesome. He played some guard also when some of those guys needed a break or went down for a little bit, and just been one of those that sixth offensive lineman that was just rock solid. And so they gave him the bag and are really investing in him. But like I said, he's done great, but he has to prove it on a 60, 70 snaps a game now. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the same way the 49ers are with our offensive line. I feel like a lot of people think there's question marks there, but you kind of have to trust these offensive minded head coaches like Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay to, really get it done and figure out the right players for those positions. So, I think that you're kind of in the same space we are, where we're confident in what we have and the ability for that to, you know, um, work out in a way that is, I'm trying to think the word here, that works out for everybody. But so let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk a little bit about, because there's a lot of different things going on the defensive side of the ball for the Rams. First of all, Jalen Ramsey's on the pup right now. I'd love to know
he didn't go.
No,
he ended up. I'm sorry,
he didn't. Okay,
he ended up. They were gonna. You're correct. They announced he was gonna go, and they decided against it the next day, and they never put him on, which is a big deal because he's been on the field. Like, he wouldn't even have been allowed on the field if he was on the pup, and he's been like now the talk of camp once the pads have gone on, and the Rams put on pads a little earlier than most teams just because of that. They're going to start the season 3 days earlier than everybody else on that Thursday night game. But he's over there coaching, and just every time one of these, there's a bunch of young guys in the secondary, and they run over to him, and he's just like this extra coach, and he's in his element because he's a really smart guy, really involved. He has the playbook in his hand, the call sheet they call it, and he's like an extra coach out there. So he's definitely involved, and it was really cool that they decided not to put him on. He's lower leg, his lower body's fine. He had a surgery on one of his shoulders. The other one he didn't have on. They were both injured, and so he'll be back by the first game of the season. But he's definitely not putting on pads in preseason.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of these veteran guys, you don't really have to have them come out and play in these preseason games. You kind of know what you're getting into. The light went on there. And so, these guys tend to miss those preseason games and not miss a beat. It's more for these, the younger guys. So with your secondary, I'd love to know, are there any younger guys on this secondary this year that, obviously Ramsey's one of the best, if not the best corner in the league. That's no question there. But when we're talking about, these players on the Rams in the secondary, are we seeing any guys who are young guys coming and filling in, or guys who have only played, a season? Or what does your secondary look like going into this season?
Yeah, I mean, so the safety position is pretty well set from last year. We had Jordan Fuller, he was actually had the green dot a lot of the time. Obviously, that's going to go now to Bobby Wagner, but Nick Scott, Taylor Rapp, like three guys that were our primary safeties. We got a couple of young guys, Terrell Burgess, Quentin Lake is a recruited out of UCLA, a good player. But so the safety position, that's just Rams 101, just a bunch of young guys that can, 3 or 4 guys that can all fill in at that position and do a good job. So that's, 3 guys, like I say, Fuller, Scott are probably the starters, and Rapp is probably the third guy in. But at quarterback's the bigger issue. And so we talked about Ramsey. We lost Darius Williams to Jacksonville in free agency. That was a big loss that was replaced by Troy Hill, who had gone to Cleveland for 1 year, was with the Rams prior to that. Jalen's good buddy. A lot of people, on the Rams love him. I'm not totally convinced yet until I see it. So he's supposed to be cornerback 2. Cornerback 3 is right now penciled in as David Long. We got another guy, Robert Rochelle, who played great last year. But there's probably the big talk in terms of draft picks in new, rookies in training camp are the 2 cornerbacks that we drafted. Jacoby Durant, South Carolina State, HBCU, shout out. He was our second pick. He was in the 4th round, and small guy, little slot guy. He's just tearing it up. And he played a couple of picks against Clemson the prior year. And so he's doing great. And then Darian Kendrick, we got him in the 6th round. A lot of people think that certainly the steal of our draft, if not among the steal of the draft period. This guy is from Georgia. He started on that national championship team at cornerback for Georgia. 3 years prior, he started as a redshirt freshman for Clemson and at cornerback and won the national championship. So he fell hard for a couple of reasons. He fell hard for his combine time, his 40, and he fell hard because he had some trouble at Clemson, which was the reason that he got kicked out and ended up getting on the transfer to Georgia. But he's been doing great too. So a couple of really exciting guys there. So I had wanted them to trade for a Bradbury or somebody like that, but they didn't do it. They stuck with their guys, brought Troy Hill back, and that's definitely a questionable group, but a lot of talent. We'll see who really wins the battle there.
Yeah, you would say that, for a team, I guess maybe not in this case, but that would probably be your weakest group would be the secondary. Or would you say it's your linebacking core most likely? The defense is a little different this year, right? Like you're looking at a defense that there are a lot more holes than there were last year, obviously. And I think that we'll get to the linebackers because we all know, who's one of your linebackers now. But the secondary outside of Ramsey, they're decent players, but you're looking at guys who generally are unproven a little bit or haven't been put in the situation, or to the point where if Jalen Ramsey gets hurt, you're in a little bit of a different situation in general, right?
Yeah, we were there last year. I mean, the Rams team build model is definitely, high end and a bunch of rookie guys and not a lot of veterans on, midterm, middle class deals, if you will.
Yeah,
mostly our offensive line, Havenstein and Allen, Tyler Higbee, at tight end, and other than that, there's not a lot of guys, with the exception of say Bobby Wagner, which is a
we'll get to Bobby, don't you?
We'll get to Bobby, but no, just in terms of the team build model, that's the way the Rams roll. Yeah. It's high end guys, Stafford, Donald, Leonard Floyd, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Ramsey, making these top guys making a lot of money, and then a bunch of lowering guys. So the risk in that model, to your point, is that if injuries. One of those guys goes down, those top guys goes down, then you are going to have to rely on guys that are really more role players to step in to play those those multiple roles that these other guys play. So yeah, but that's always been the case. That's no different than last year.
We got a question from one of the listeners here in the comments. Cade Sanos wants to know, can the Rams' weaker linebackers and safeties stop the Niners' run? I think maybe it's partly a troll question, but I think at the same time, like he wants to know, the Niners are primarily a run-first football team, with safeties and linebackers that aren't as good. Obviously, there's going to be a linebacker we're going to talk about. What is the strategy to stop the 49ers, who are primarily a run-first offense?
Yeah, and so where the Niners killed us last year, and other teams did as well, was at that linebacker position, and Troy Reeder, and then we had a rookie, Ernest Jones, and then another young guy, Travin Howard, and Ernest Jones hadn't come into his own yet. He got a little bit of injury. He got injured here and there, and Troy Reeder just is not a NFL inside linebacker, and he was wearing the dot a lot of the time. The guy's a great special teams player. It's not his fault. Like, he wasn't some high draft pick that just didn't perform or something. And he's with the Chargers now, or probably just play special teams. But so that's where we got scorched. And we play this 2 high shell, which is really like a 4-2-5 a lot of the time. And we don't have our big bruisers in there. With Donald and Gaines, we don't have Ashawn in there. Ashawn Robinson as a third defensive lineman, then we're going to get scorched if the linebackers can't move. So anyway, the answer is that obviously our mass upgrade was the Bobby Wagner signing, and then that's really where we're, that's really where we'll shine. And then the second part of the answer is that where we didn't win for 6 years in a row, 3 years in a row, 6 games in a row. The infamous losing streak. And what Raheem Morris finally did in that championship game was load the box. and brought in certainly the three, brought in Ashawn to join Donald and Gaines up front. Brought in a safety into the along with both edges. Now we're at 5-2, and then brought a safety up close, and we're playing an 8-man box, and basically said, "Hey, Jimmy, you got to beat us. Jimmy and Kyle, you got to beat us over the top." And I don't know whether he was calling the plays and he couldn't do it, and Jimmy couldn't. They just kept running.
Jimmy couldn't do it. We all
running the ball into the wall, running the ball into the wall, and that's the only reason in that game it didn't win the previous 6. So obviously the answer to the question is upgraded inside linebacker and some different strategy will help a lot. But our safeties don't typically get involved in the run game a lot. They're really mostly up high, taking away the explosives.
I guess I have a question, then we'll get to the linebackers. Is with Trey Lance, as a Rams fan, as someone who's seen the 49ers run all over the Rams, with the fact that there's a quarterback who has the ability, obviously we don't know yet. We've seen him play 2 games. Like, there's a chance he could be one of the best throwers in the entire NFL. We just don't know yet. If Trey Lance is a better thrower of the football and actually can stretch the field, how do you think that'll affect the Rams? And do you think that, how does that make you feel about playing the 49ers when they have a team that can actually throw the ball as well as run the ball?
Yeah. The reason this is a very simplistic explanation, so please don't read too much into it. But the Rams have succeeded ever since Staley got there. So for the last 2 seasons, because Raheem Morris basically ran Staley's defense last year with some tweaks. But with that too high shell, it takes away those bigger plays, and we took away the big plays against teams. Plenty of teams with quarterbacks with big arms, and that was how we contained teams. And it's just the way the Rams played it, and then relied on that, on Donald and Gaines, Robinson up front, and where we fell short was in the linebackers core when the guys got through that first phase, and get offensive linemen out and so forth. So we're not worried as much about the big plays because we didn't dump. Once it was obvious that Garoppolo wasn't going to throw over the top, then we loaded it up with 8 or 9. But we're not worried about the big plays. Lance has a big arm. There's no question he has that potential. But there were plenty of other quarterbacks that we played that did too. So that's not the issue. The issue for us is Lance's mobility, as well as, and then the other question mark is, can he hit those when we are in those too high shells? Can he hit those with those intermediate passes and short passes with the same type of speed and accuracy that Jimmy G was successful at least against us? And so, those are the bigger questions. I think his mobility is probably the biggest threat to the Rams, not necessarily stretching the field as much.
Totally. Okay, let's get to the linebackers, because I know you're dying to talk about Bobby Wagner. You mentioned Troy Reeder basically isn't the type of linebacker that you would want. And so you replaced him with Bobby Wagner this offseason. This is one of the big upgrades, probably the biggest upgrade I think the Rams had this offseason. And Bobby Wagner struggled in coverage throughout the last couple of years in Seattle. Are you worried about, the coverage? Obviously, you're going to get a much better run-stopping linebacker, but you're losing the coverage. And I don't know too much about Troy Reeder's coverage, so maybe you're just gaining something.
He was the worst coverage linebacker in the league, and it wasn't even close. So we were begging just to drop our third safety and just to play linebacker the whole season. So Bobby Wagner is going to be an upgrade. But having said that, we're not here to compare ourselves to compare anyone to Troy Reeder. The issue is, Bobby Wagner is not the coverage linebacker that he used to be. Obviously, he's older and so forth. He's still good in the run and in the box. The key is Ernest Jones, who's now going to be in his second year with us, is a great coverage linebacker. And so it's going to be interesting to see. There's even some whispers about, and we don't know exactly, and the beat writers can't talk about it because they're not allowed to talk about schemes. No beat writers are in camp.
Yeah.
But they have hinted at the fact that there's going to be some new looks, being thrown up. So I can see where Bobby might move over to an edge, or he might or we might bring a linebacker, or we might bring another safety into the box, or there might be some different looks there that get Bobby out of situations where he's in coverage. So they might scheme around it a little bit. He's not terrible in coverage. He's certainly a massive upgrade over what we had last year. But that is, to be fair, isn't saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is he's not necessarily like a poor, I don't think he's the worst coverage linebacker, but I don't think he's a great coverage linebacker
he's
either.
Probably an average coverage linebacker.
Yeah,
at this point.
I think
just his
average to
intelligence.
Below average. Yeah,
he's just his intelligence, his ability to wear the dot and lead the defense from the middle, which we lacked, sorely lacked last year. Is just there's so many other intangibles there, and now you get Donald, Wagner, and Ramsey in our three phases, and it's just kind of takes a load off of Donald and Ramsey from having to worry about that gap in the middle there. So we'll see how it all works out. I mean, until they strap them up and play the games, we don't know. But there's optimism there for sure.
It's interesting just because, this is the end of Bobby Wagner's career, and he had such a prominent career where he was such a force in Seattle. I'm curious to see, if he can continue that in LA, where he's on another team that is potentially a Super Bowl contender. So, I mean, he's always played well when he's on teams with talented players around. So we'll see. But I think this is the part that needs no introduction. This is the defensive line of the Rams, has Aaron Donald and a bunch of pieces. And I just want you to really let the Niner fans know, and so they learn about these pieces around Aaron Donald. I think we all know who Aaron Donald is, or as Niner fans call him, Daniel Brunskill's
daddy,
son. Daniel Brunskill's his daddy. He's his son.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Daniel Brunskill's like fine. He's, a great story. He's an AAF guard who went into the NFL and played decently, and for some reason just stops Aaron Donald, who is the bar none best NFL player in the world. But let's hear about, the Greg Gaines, those kind of guys. I think Niner fans don't understand that because you did have Von Miller. And Von Miller, when you go back and watch the film from the Rams-Niners NFC Championship game, was such a force and so important in getting to Garoppolo and that final drive where Garoppolo couldn't do anything. And so how do you replace a Von Miller on a team like this, even if you do have Aaron Donald?
Yeah, so the kind of the unsung hero of that the two edges is Leonard Floyd, and I mean that guy just has been a stalwart over there, and he doesn't get the notoriety because of Donald and then Von Miller coming over and so forth. But he's a stud at one edge, and then so at the beginning of last year, before Von came over, Justin Hollins and Terrell Lewis were balling out, just really doing a great job between the two of them. Also had Owo Okoronkwo, who's now with Houston, and he was balling out too. And then all three of them got injured at just different times, and there was all the COVID crap, and just all three of them kind of went down, and that's when they really went shopping for.
Oh wow! Breaking news here: Vin Scully just passed away.
Oh my God!
At age 94. Wow. That's crazy. We have to continue the show, Ramsbeat. I'll let you. I know this is important for you because you're a big Dodgers guy.
Oh my God! I grew up with that guy.
Shout out to Vin Scully, the best broadcaster in all of sports. That's really sad. 94 years old, 67 years, the longest stint as a broadcaster. So,
wow. Yeah, grew up on that guy. Wow, that's brutal. But let's continue the show.
Yeah, we can continue. Sorry about that, Ramsby. I just thought, and I know you. I didn't want you to find out.
I'm glad I got my reaction when I heard that for the first time.
So
I'm just it's I'll compartmentalize. Let's keep moving on. But so the edges were playing great, and then they just kind of started getting hurt one by one, and that's when they went shopping and got him for a second, and then couldn't afford the cap hit, so gave him a third to get to pay his salary. So that's how the Rams roll. But obviously he came in and did a great job, and it was he played edge, awesome, He really gave us a lift. But he really, one of the contributions that a lot of people talk about, he really taught Aaron Donald how to be a better leader. Aaron Donald's always been a silent leader ever since he came into the league in 14 and never really talked a lot. And Vaughn told him that, people want to hear, that your teammates want to hear you. They need to hear you. They're yearning to hear you, and you don't give them that. And that's not helping the team. And silent leadership is great, but leading by example, but there's more to leadership than that. And Aaron Donald really blossomed into a much more vocal leader, in addition to continuing to be a leader by example. And that was a big part of the Rams Super Bowl run. And that's something that Von Miller maybe doesn't get enough credit for, and Aaron Donald. But in terms of those guys, so we didn't, replace Vaughn with anybody. It's Justin Hollins and Terrell Lewis and a couple of other guys that were high on, Chris Garrett and Daniel Hardy, a couple of 7th-round picks. Chris Garrett's been around a year too. We'll see how they shine, but it's kind of by committee on the other edge. But in terms of that defensive line, it's pretty much back intact. It's Aaron Donald, Greg Gaines, and Ashawn Robinson. And those 3 guys just kill it up front and take up a lot of space and do their thing. So
it'll be interesting to see, how different it looks like without Von Miller. We all know Von Miller is one of the best players in the league, and it's interesting because you play Von Miller week 1. Von Miller's going to go see his buddy Matthew Stafford, you want to ring with, that first night at SoFi. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to find out real quick what the Rams defensive line looks like when they have to play Josh Allen, who's, one of the best quarterbacks in the league and obviously a tremendous runner. So it'll be really interesting to see how you guys tackle that. But, obviously it's not, I don't want to throw this in your face, but it's not the Niners defensive line. We all know that San Francisco's defensive line is the best in the NFC West. And I think that their edges obviously take out everybody. But the thing is, Aaron Donald is such a force that it evens it out a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see, what kind of pass rush we see from the Rams this year. But let's keep going. The Rams, obviously they're Super Bowl champions. There really isn't a Super Bowl hangover when you win generally. But there's a little more cockiness. So, from obviously you guys are practicing as well as us. What kind of stuff are you hearing from the Rams side of the NFC West? How they're feeling about trying to repeat, how they feel about their strength of schedule, the fact that they're seeing a Buffalo team that probably should have been in the Super Bowl against them. If Patrick Mahomes wasn't a god, what is the general consensus in Rams land when it comes to this season that's about to happen?
Yeah, they see all the right things. All these young whippersnapper coaches, 30-something, 40s. These young guys say all the right stuff, and McVay's right up there with saying all the right stuff. It's, hey, last year's over, and it doesn't mean anything, and everybody's more motivated now that they have the feeling, and so all the right stuff is being said. There's no real sort of party attitude, if you will, that maybe some teams have had in the past, older teams or whatever. But you never know. You don't know until you see it. I think that when you look at the players that we lost: Andrew Whitworth, Austin Corbett, Darius Williams, Von Miller, OBJ, Robert Woods in the middle of last season. We talked about Sebastian Joseph Day, who was the starter before he got hurt and Greg Gaines took over. Overall, Poranco was a big contributor on the edge. Sony Michel, two-time Super Bowl champ. Eric Weddle was a huge benefit to us. Came off the beach, and thank God that guy's a fitness freak and was in shape. And we talked about Troy Reeder, and then Johnny Munt, our punter, who was a longtime punter. So a lot of guys. There's 12 guys right there that are gone, that were either starters or played an integral role at either part of or all of the season. So a lot of turnover, and it's kind of a wait and see. We'll see what happens with some of these younger guys stepping in, to repeat. But the key for the Rams is, I think with any team, is just, hey, stay in contention, stay sustainable in terms of winning, and get to the playoffs, and then see what happens. If you're really looking good along the way, make some moves midseason to bolster things up and make a run. And so that's the goal. I mean, we all have known what it's like to have the dog days of having a team that just you knew sucked and had no chance to even make the playoffs. Yeah. And we went through it between the greatest show on turf and then this McVay team, and 12 years of Fisher disaster. And so just appreciative of that, and just always want a chance to be in contention, and then see how the cards fall at the end.
We got you for a few more questions, and then we'll let you go. First of all, we got Alex Faulkner. He wants to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do the Niners scare you as a Rams fan?
I would say...
and you could be honest here. You could piss off all the fans. I don't care.
I'm always honest. I'm always, that's the reason I get brought up in these spaces, because I'm always honest. I mean, unless it's a duel, like with like we set up on these things, where it's it's a formal debate where you're supposed to roast the other team, the ISO or the 3-on, whatever it is. Then it's then everything, from my perspective anyway. I try not to be a homer. I try to be as honest as possible. But I think the Niners are top of the list. I think the Bucks last year probably would have been the Bucks and the Packers ahead of the Niners, and I think the Bucks fell off significantly, and I think the Packers fell off significantly, and the Bucks I think are okay, but Jensen going down, and it's not off to a good start. And this sort of Brady having this money in his bag, the $375 million or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about that team either. So I put the Niners right up there at the top of the list. I mean, obviously in division and so forth. It's obviously had our number in the regular season for forever, and going back certainly 3 seasons. And so, right up there at the top of the list. I mean, everything, both of these teams are fine in terms of their rosters. I mean, the big question for Rams fans is Trey Lance. Is he who they want? They drafted and spent all that capital to be. And if he is, I'm first to say it's going to be a long 10 years. That's all I know. So if he's not, then never wish failure or mediocrity on anybody, but it'd be a big few, PHEU. So, but if he's the guy, it's going to be a long 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even for Niner fans right now, a lot of us are basically, if Trey Lance is the guy, then there's nothing separating this team from winning Super Bowls. Not Super Bowls. I think they're good. They're good enough. They play well enough. Kyle Shanahan schemes them well enough. The roster talent is absolutely there. That's why, we knew Bosa was going to get paid. I think everybody kind of knew Bosa was going to get paid. But the Debo stuff was kind of weird, because it seemed like there were always some sort of story being like, oh, maybe Debo won't get paid, or maybe Debo isn't the guy they think he is. And, when the Debo got paid, it felt like the biggest sigh of relief I think Niner fans could have felt, because we all know Bosa's going to get paid. Bosa's absolutely going to get paid. That'll happen when it happens. And then now, we're seeing all this stuff. CG Ruthless Sports Network mentions right here, the 49ers secondary should improve. Charvarius Ward is much better than anyone they had on the other side of the corner for this team. Emmanuel Mosley is a great corner. I think that he's probably one of the better, undrafted free agents that they've ever really signed, to be on this team. He's been there and he's been consistent. But Charvarius Ward, that guy is really good. Like, I think it gets underestimated because the Chiefs are in so many shootouts, but he's a damn good corner. And I think that if they can figure out, for me as a Niner fan, I think the things that scare me the most are the offensive line and figuring out the other safety that is playing on the other side of Jimmy Ward. And I think that Hufanga sounds like he's got the job, and we'll see how he plays, obviously, right? We open up against 2 bad teams while you play the freaking Buffalo Bills. We play the Chicago Bears and the Seattle Seahawks, who are going to have either Drew Lock or Geno Smith at quarterback. I don't know if you've seen the reports, Ramsbeat, but it sounds like those guys are just fucking terrible. And so it's great for us.
And plus, look at Carroll. I mean, he's just never been able to install any semblance of an offense up there.
Well, and Pete Carroll's also, he's old. His defense has passed him by. I had a Seahawks fan on, a Seahawks friend of mine who's a Seahawks radio host on, and he basically said this is the first year where Pete Carroll isn't doing the default BS cover 3. So we'll see how they are. But like, there's no weapons besides DK and Tyler Lockett and maybe this kid Kenneth Walker who really scare me on the Seahawks. Their defense is awful. Their offensive line is a bunch of rookies at this point. It's just nothing there. And then when you look at the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray's a force. But what else on the Arizona Cardinals really scares you? Hopkins isn't going to be back for 6 games. You know, I'm not afraid of Hollywood Brown personally. I don't know about you guys. I don't think you are either. And I'm not afraid of James Conner, even though he ran rampant on us last year. So when it comes down to this division, this conversation, Niners-Rams, I think is the most important because these are maybe the two best teams in the NFC and the 2 best teams in the NFC West.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely 2 of the better rosters. I mean, when it comes to the division, you've probably seen that graph that I put up, or that grid that I put up that shows the 3 teams that each team plays that are different from the rest of the division. It's based upon last year's, how each team finished in the standings last year. And so the Rams have Buffalo, Dallas, and Green Bay in Green Bay. Those are our 3. San Francisco is Chicago. San Francisco is Chicago, Miami at home, and the Commanders at home. So it's like I mean, we're talking about 3 major differences.
It pays off to barely make the playoffs. It pays
off to come in 3rd, and so so those 3 could tilt the division. And I could easily see the Niners, like, again, Trey Lance being a guy. Definitely could see the Niners winning the division because, by a game or 2. That would probably be thrown by those 3 games, because otherwise we play the same schedule. And then the Rams get a wild card and seeing where we go from there.
So final question of the night before we let you go, Ramsbeat. What is the Rams' expectation for their record? You said there's always a chance the Niners can win the division. I think Rams fans think they're going to win the division mostly. A lot of Niner fans, we're saying 10, 11 wins, depends on Trey Lance's skills. What is the general consensus of the Rams, and what games are the games that really scare you on your schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both, I kind of project both teams in that 10-11 win range. That's where the betting markets have them as well. So I don't think there's any, any real, questions there or surprises there. You get some other teams like Buffalo and stuff, and a lot of Baltimore fans projecting, 14 wins and things like that. I just don't think that's realistic, especially with the strength of schedule. Rams have the so-called strong, hardest schedule, but it's based on last year's standings or results. So it is what it is. But the games that are obviously, that are the big games are Buffalo to start the year. The number 1 contender, according to most people, in the AFC on that Thursday night opener. So that'll be exciting. Both San Francisco games. I mean, how can you not include San Francisco, given the fact of what we just talked about, as well as our track record against San Francisco for the last 3 seasons. Not so worried about Dallas. We have Dallas at home. I think they really fell off. I think their front office / coaching situation is an absolute shit show.
Wasting Dak Prescott's career. It was a tremendous quarterback, and they're just wasting him away.
It's crazy. And Tampa Bay, you could call it a game. I mean, we're 3-0 in the last 3 games against Tampa Bay. So, that would be up there. Maybe at Kansas City for sure, at Green Bay for sure, and then the Charger game, which is, at quote unquote at Chargers, which is our own field. So there's, there's a tough that's near the end of the year. So some tough games.
Game.
Then there's all the, obviously, in addition to Kansas City, there's the other AFC West teams, which we will both have to play. So it's a gauntlet for sure. But hopefully we can take care of business. Got lucky with a good home schedule. That extra game of the 17 at home, and then the Charger game, which is a road game. So that's clear, theoretically at home as well. So a little bit of love there from the schedule makers, and so we'll see how it goes.
I mean, is it home though, Ramsbeat? Really? Like, is SoFi home? Because there's more Niner fans there than there is Rams fans.
No,
you can't even deny that.
No. I've always been a lot of Ram fans want to stand up and scream about that issue, and when that happened in both games, it was the worst. The week 18 was a lot worse because we were in the playoffs, and that was a disaster. And then the championship game was bad, but it wasn't as bad as the other one. But no, but it's just it's just the reality of I'm a fan going way back to when they were as a kid, and they were leaving LA and going to Orange County and then going to St. Louis and stuff. But they just lost football. Pro football was gone from LA for forever, essentially, and for 30 years, I guess. And so, had a lot of other, the Lakers, obviously it's a Laker town, and the Dodgers, and then, USC and all the other stuff going on there. So it's just really, with the pro football coming back, it just takes time. And there are definitely more Cowboys fans, definitely more Raiders fans, and more Niners fans in SoCal than there are Rams fans, probably even to this day. So it's going to take time. And I just tell everybody, hey, chill out, call a spade, and if anything, look to the Niners, look to the Jets, who have a great fan base, even though they have had no success like you guys have had. And look to some of these fan bases that are passionate, and learn from them, and let's try and pattern ourselves after them, because we're just getting started. I mean, really, as a fan base, and look at that parade, and look at the rally and the Super Bowl. It wasn't very big, and it just goes to show you where we're at as a fan base. So I own it. A lot of Rams fans don't want to own it, but I own it and say, hey, we have a chance to craft this in a way that will grow over time. So hopefully, certainly winning a Super Bowl doesn't hurt jump-starting it, and with a stadium like that and everything else. But I own it. It is what it is, and I think it was bullshit that they said don't sell tickets in Northern California. That was bum league. And,
the Seahawks did it to us in 2000.
Did they really?
Yes, they did.
Okay,
the Seahawks were petty. They were the most petty football team ever. But Ramsbeat, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. If people want to follow you on Twitter or talk to you or talk smack during that Week 4 game, how can they do it?
Oh, Twitter at Ramsbeat. We'll be in Spaces. DM me. Always happy to get on, and in these spaces a lot, and always love to mix it up with the Niner faithful. So really appreciate you having me on, Niner Nate, and like I say, at the end of that debate, like I say, every chance I get, we're just fortunate as a Northern California, Southern California, inbred rivalry to have our football teams. First of all, for the Rams to even have a football, or LA to even have a football team, but to have a rivalry between Northern California and Southern California, where both teams are good at the same time, and it's great. It's great to see. So hopefully now with the C, what do you guys call them? The C scum in retreat, in a nosedive into the sand, and the Cardinals really never have been there. Hopefully we can build a rivalry that can last for a while with both teams being good. So that's what's most exciting to me, because look at the alternative, right? One of us being good, one of us not. It's not as much fun.
I think we're on the verge of a Giants-Dodgers type rivalry when it comes to Niners-Rams.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The NFL. Awesome? I think the NFL could not be any happier that that's about to happen, because Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay are both young head coaches. They both have. I think the Rams will be the ones that have to get a young quarterback here next, but the 49ers hopefully have their quarterback of the future. They have talented football players. As long as you have talented football players, you tend to win games. And so I think the NFL can't be happier with the fact that the NorCal team, the SoCal team hate each other. You got Aaron Donald going on the NFL Network saying, I hate the 49ers. Like, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah,
these games should be prime time. Every time these two teams play, it should be on prime time. And if it's not, then the NFL is messing up. And so that's where we are at this point. We'll see what happens week 4 in Santa Clara. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for tuning in to all the NFC West preview episodes. If you haven't checked them all out, Seahawks and Cardinals up on the podcast. This will be up as soon as you're listening to it or the next day after you're watching the video. And next week, the Niners, Trey Lance. We return to a football field with football. I can't believe it. We are back, baby. As well as that, I'll be announcing my 2 co-hosts for this season, my Niner Nate's Nonsense team for 2022. Super excited for you to meet them. Both great guys. Should be a ton of fun. Ramsbeat, once again, thanks for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. And, one more thing. The hype train never stops, baby.